Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Oh, Ryan, it's been a while.
It's been a while. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. And you're spending the year. I'm not sure if you're ever coming home.
I'm living that digital nomad life, but I unfortunately have to return to New York occasionally for.
I think nomad
obligations.
I think nomad suggests that you do some work. So I'm not sure. I think you're just a bum.
I mostly work.
You're just a bum who can afford plane tickets.
If only that were true. That would be like Prince Harry or somebody like that. All
right. So let's now we're not going to cover all these places today, but why don't you share where you've been?
Oh yeah. So I was in Playa del Carmen, and then I was in Panama. We definitely going to do an episode about that. There's a lot to say about Panama, and then I've been in Mexico City, where I am now, and then I just got back yesterday from a long weekend in Oaxaca, which is what we're talking about today, Oaxaca City.
Indeed. And so you've been traveling all around, and I've noticed on your Instagram, you've purchased a new hat.
I got a hat, a Panama hat, in Panama, when in Panama, as they say.
Wait. When in Panama? I saw you wearing it in Mexico.
Well, I bought one in Mexico, in Playa del Carmen, and it was really bad. And so when I got to Panama, I realized how bad it was, and I got a real Panama hat made in Ecuador from one of the handful of like real people who make these hats. And so it's a beautiful hat.
You bought a Panama hat in Mexico, and then you didn't like it, so you bought a Panama hat in Ecuador, even though you were in Panama.
Well, no, all Panama hats are made in Ecuador. Panama doesn't make hats.
They should be called an Ecuador hat.
Well, yeah, but they were popularized by people like Teddy Roosevelt in Panama, which we can talk about and cover it at length in the Panama episode.
I don't know that I can wait for this deep dive into the hat. Let me just ask one more hat-related question. Two more hat-related questions. The first question is, what made the bad one bad, and what makes the good one good?
Well, the good one is made from like the real material, and it's hand woven, and it's soft and it rolls up. And then the bad one was like a cheap vinyl kind of like
that sounds like something you would buy.
Yeah, well, I just bought it because literally I needed the sun protection in Cancun, because Cancun is like sort of a hellscape. And
poor thing. Too much sun in Cancun. Everybody feels so bad.
I'm very pale, so I need the protection.
Especially up there on top of the head. But one more question I have is, when you have a nice hat, I've always thought it must be very hard to travel with. And I actually had a boss who was kind of an old school Texas man who traveled with a Stetson, and he had a hat box that would be like his carry-on.
Yeah, I mean,
so how did you travel with a good hat?
Well, I could have, because it's a real Panama hat. In theory, I could roll it up, but I feel scary doing that. I didn't buy the tube that they sell because I didn't have space in my luggage. So I have just been wearing it on the plane and then putting it on my knee when I sleep. Because it is hard to sleep.
Are you a hat guy now?
I know I was in Oaxaca and I didn't buy a Oaxacan hat, and that would have been my chance to double down on the hat. So I've only got the one hat. I mean, I've got a couple of baseball caps, but those are neither here nor there. But I do like this hat, and I'm gonna wear it in Brooklyn when the time is right.
Fantastic. Well, I hope that time never comes. So we're going to Oaxaca, and we're going to take off in just a second because I know you've got a lot to cover here, Ryan. But I also wanted to say, exciting episode coming up, our yearly regular visit with Amy Verschup from the New York Times. We've got 52 places to travel, back again, one of my favorite publications of the year from the New York Times. And let me tell you, this year knocked it out of the park. I've been a bunch of these places.
Yeah, I mean, we scooped the New York Times on New Haven.
I would like to claim that we scooped him on Bhutan, because Bhutan made the list this year. I mean, I guess when you do as many episodes as we have, you're gonna talk about some of the same places as the New York Times.
It's true. But the list was really cool this year, and I look forward to sort of unpacking it with you and hearing you and Amy talk about sort of the thinking behind this year's list.
Oh, I love diving in. She's become one of my favorite guests. So I'm excited for that to come up. And if you're getting on a plane and you need something nice and enjoyable to browse and to feed your wanderlust, just pull up that 52 places. Let's put your Panama hat on your knee and dig right in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kieran, I think with all that discussion, why don't you hold on to your hats? Tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
All right. Well, we are in Oaxaca. Oaxaca is only a 1 hour.
We're not in Oaxaca. We're talking about Oaxaca.
I was in Oaxaca yesterday, so I feel a noche, as you could say. I feel a little Oaxacan, today.
A noche isn't yesterday, right?
It's
That's last night.
Well, I was technically there late afternoon.
Yeah, sure.
So it's a 1 hour flight from Mexico City. And Oaxaca is the capital of the state of Oaxaca. So Oaxaca City is the capital of the state of Oaxaca. That's pretty easy to remember. It's a city of about 700,000 people. And I spent 3 full days here, but there's definitely a lot more you can see and do. And there's other sort of excursions you can go on in sort of the neighboring hour or two outside of Oaxaca. And then there's a lot more in Oaxaca State, which I've never had a chance to explore yet, but maybe one day. It's a really beautiful city. It was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. Both the city center and a couple of the archaeological sites that sit outside of the city. And, the first thing I would advise when going to Oaxaca is just to start, taking like a walk around. There's a lot of really cool neighborhoods around.
A Oaxaca, if you will.
A Oaxaca, exactly. There's a lot of really cool neighborhoods around Centro. You've got little squares, parks, galleries, cafes. You've got a main square called Zocalo, similar to Mexico City, that actually dates back to the mid 1500s. So it's a really old town, both old in the pre-Hispanic context and old in the Hispanic context. So it's a very interesting place with a lot of history and a lot of beautiful old architecture and buildings.
And how long would you recommend for a tourist stay?
I mean, I think, it's a kind of city you could spend a weekend, a long weekend, a week, and be satisfied with your trip. I was there for, we basically had like 3.5 days. And there's definitely stuff that I didn't get to do that if I was there for a few more days, I would have explored. So I'm going to try to kind of hit some of the main sites, Kieran, of Oaxaca, and understanding that this is only a very partial sort of like high level look at what there is to do in the city. And, over the course of my travels in Mexico City and in Oaxaca, I've met people who become kind of regular visitors to Oaxaca because there is so much to do. So that's something worth keeping in mind. So kind of jump into some of the culture. There are a lot of local museums, sort of art and history and religious oriented. You would have enjoyed that. It's really a city of churches and covenants and monasteries. That's a lot. A lot of Oaxaca is places that were once a monastery, now a hotel. We stayed in a convent that was now a hotel, and it was so funny. The room that I stayed in, I picked like a pretty reasonable room. And it definitely had that sort of like, there was a nun who lived in here cloistered kind of vibe.
All right. Yeah, and you're getting me a little hot and bothered.
So 2 things that are definitely worth seeing in Oaxaca from a cultural perspective are right next door to each other. And they are the Centro Cultural San Pablo and the Museo Textil de Oaxaca.
Wow, and Ryan, your Spanish is really improving.
I've been working on it. I'm 99 days into Duolingo. So the Centro Cultural San Pablo is a 17th century convent that's been turned into an arts venue. They have concerts there and classes and exhibitions that showcase various aspects of Oaxaca and Oaxacan culture. There's also kind of a really cool coffee shop inside that sort of sits in the middle of this kind of nice outdoor sort of not an alleyway, but like space in between the Covenant and another museum that's really lovely, gets a lot of sun. And while we were there, there were two exhibits of contemporary Oaxacan artists who were sort of showcasing some of their work. And it was, very, very contemporary art, the kind of stuff you would expect to see, in a bigger city. But it was kind of cool to think that there are a lot of artists who are living and working in Oaxaca right now, and that there are these places like the Centro Cultural that showcases their work. So this is a place you can spend like an hour or so, hit a couple of these exhibits, see if there's anything live happening while you're in town. Any sort of live music, et cetera, because they do have events there. And this is also a really beautiful building. It's the 17th century convent, so that is worth exploring as well, as long as along with whatever various sort of exhibits that they might have up at any given time. And then next door to that is the Textile Museum, and this is really cool. It's a small museum. It's free. In fact, both of these museums are free. And this highlights a lot of the local textile work. Oaxaca is known for their crafts. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the episode. But this is a museum that sort of highlights really colorful, beautiful textiles and tapestries that were created locally, both more modern and then stuff that dates back a bit. One of the standout exhibits I thought was this exhibit that highlights various tapestries that are made to not just have a beautiful front. When you have a rug and you put it on the floor, you really care about what the top of that rug looks like, obviously. But this was an exhibit that when the artist made these, they actually wanted both sides to be able to have a beautiful, beautiful perspective. And so that's kind of a cool thing that I hadn't really thought about before.
And so are they hung like in the middle of a room so you can walk around the full sides?
Exactly. Yeah, they're hung in the middle of the workroom, and so you can see the front and the back, and some of them have really elaborate, backs that you would totally miss if they were just sort of hung up against a wall or on a floor like a normal tapestry. So that's a really cool thing. And then they have an exhibit that seemed to be pretty permanent that highlights examples of textiles that served as an early form of optical art. A lot of
like magic eyes,
exactly like magic eyes. A lot of the sort of 1950s, 1960s sort of New York artists who were really into optical art spent time in Oaxaca. And there's a bit. The curator has it's actually a well curated museum. They have everything both in English and Spanish, so you can definitely follow along if you're like me and you don't speak that much Spanish. But I thought it was really interesting, and I had never kind of seen tapestries that sort of made your eyes pop, or one of the quotes was on made your eyes feel drunk.
I got to be honest, textile museums are usually very low on my list when I'm visiting cities. There's I don't know, it just doesn't grab me. But you're making a pretty good pitch for this one.
Yeah, it was cool. And several of my friends who know Oaxaca well suggested it. It was high on their list too. So it definitely is something worth seeing. And there's a lot of crafting you can do and going out and kind of looking for. It's a great place to buy, souvenirs to take home. The museum has a lovely gift shop with some really beautiful clothing and other textiles.
My obvious question is, did you purchase anything?
I purchased some stuff, but not any textiles. I considered getting one of these really cool Oaxacan shirts. But I was like, can I wear that around Brooklyn without getting in trouble? I wasn't really sure. So I decided.
So you decided to just stick with your Panama hat that Theodore Roosevelt wore.
Exactly. Yeah. Teddy's taken a lot of slack already. So, so that's sort of an example of a couple of the museums. There were a few others that we did, but I think those two were real standouts. But again, do some of your own investigating, because there are other museums, history, contemporary art, et cetera. There's a lot of little things to see in the city. Now, Oaxaca is a city of churches. And we saw a lot of churches in the 3 or 4 days that I was there. But one really stands out, and that is the Santo Domingo de Guzmán, which, you see, we've talked about this before, sort of church fatigue that you can get when you're...
Church fatigue, it's real. It's real. The average Joe, definitely, because I think we probably can look at some of the similarities, churches we grew up in, churches we served at, and it's real. I think 2-3 a day tops.
Yeah, exactly. 2-3 a day tops. 2-3 a trip maybe. It was funny because this one in particular was closed a couple of times. We tried to go inside, and so at the time we were going, I was like no longer that interested in seeing it because I'd seen 4 other churches, but I was really blown away by how elaborate the gold altar was and the amount of the carvings and paintings that fill the walls and the ceiling. Mm-hmm. Just incredibly beautiful. And this temple dates back originally from around the mid 1500s, along with the sort of center square of the city, and has gone through various renovations and updates like a lot of these really old cathedrals had. But just a gorgeous building, a lot of history, serves as a real functional church. So they have mass on Sundays. You'd be upset to know that I went with a friend to Oaxaca who's from Oaxaca. And he was like, I'm going to church on Sunday. Will you come with me? And I was like, I want to sleep in. So,
do you know that before you left on the Christmas episode, you told me you'd go to Catholic church?
I thought about that, and I was like, well, I barely do the funiculars, so if I let him down there.
Which famously is something I also beg Ryan to do on his travels. But he always goes to cities with funiculars and then purposely doesn't ride on them just to drive me crazy.
Well, there is no funicular in Oaxaca that I'm aware of, so I don't think I missed that. But I did. The
Oaxacan funicular sounds like a Wes Anderson movie.
But I did see a lot of church. I did go into a lot of churches. I even went into a church while there was a ceremony. I just didn't stay. While there was a mass, God, but I just didn't stay. I kind of got the gist. So okay, I remember this part. This one's in Spanish, though. I actually went to see Jaws in Spanish, which was so much fun.
Jaws? Is
Jaws?
The J gets the H sound.
Exactly. So definitely explore the churches. If this is something that you're interested in, a lot of those to see. Another thing the city has a ton of is independent gallery spaces. You're going to see a lot of galleries when you're walking around the city. I explored dozens of them, and I even bought a really... Oaxaca is known for a couple different pieces of crafts and arts, and we'll talk about. But one of the symbols is the heart. And there was this, and I'll post a picture of it on the Insta. I bought a very contemporary, weird little art sculpture made out of Oaxacan clay. That's hard to describe, but there's watches involved and screws and eyes. So it's a very weird sort of person-esque heart. It's kind of disconcerting. I don't know where I'm going to put it, but I really liked it.
I think right above the bed.
Yeah, I think
you have to take down your cross, put it right there.
The horror of that heart. 2 galleries that I'll flag, just because I really thought they had great collections. And
can we get a picture of the heart up on the Insta?
Oh, most definitely. I'll post. Yeah. It's two galleries I'll flag because I think they had the most sort of unique collections, but again, a lot of them worth exploring. Cuatro Ciez, 47 Gallery, and Estampa Gallery. Both of these in the center of the city, very easy to find, and had I think slightly more interesting local collections and less of like the same sort of stuff, which you'll see a lot of when you go around. All right. So Oaxaca is known for a couple different kinds of crafts. 2 of the standouts are this black clay pottery that's made from this local, really dark black clay. They make everything out of this, from skulls to crosses to little fun figurines to scary figurines to big bowls. I mean, you can see it really runs the gamut.
Do they make scary big bowls?
They make big bowls with skulls. So yeah, I think that qualifies.
It qualifies.
Yeah. So they make a little bit of everything, which is really cool. And then now you're familiar with these, Kiernan, because
alebrijes.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're these incredibly colorful, wonderful, whimsical Some are pretty sizable, but many of them are kind of small wooden sculptures of fantastical creatures.
Exactly. They're super colorful. And these come from Oaxaca. And
I didn't know that, because these are sold all over Mexico now, and they're super fun. And I remember I've many times considered buying them, but the really good ones are pretty expensive, because, they're great art pieces.
Yeah.
Well, and I think for people who've never seen them, a good reference point, if you haven't been to Mexico and you're wondering what these look like, is in Coco, the Pixar movie. All the animal creatures in the afterlife are modeled after alebrijes.
And although I don't think Coco officially takes place in Oaxaca, many people in Oaxaca say that Coco is largely Oaxacan.
Oh, that's funny. Wow, I didn't know that.
So I can't weigh in, specifically.
No, it's not your place.
Not my place, but this is something I heard, when I was talking to people throughout the city, and they're definitely fans of the film, and they talk about it a bit. But
boy, that speaks really well of Disney, that they managed to create a movie that takes place in Mexico, that places in Mexico want to claim as their own.
Yeah, no, I think that it really respects the culture, and they recorded a really high, instead of just sort of having dubbed actors do the voice, they got voices. Mm-hmm. They had a lot of famous Mexican actors do the Spanish version. So they really honored the piece by not just kind of like making a second, just sort of dubbing it, but actually having well-known people come in and do really high quality voice work in the Mexican animated version of Coco.
Now, did you get any alebrijes?
I did. So
cool.
I'm actually going to see a friend of mine in a couple weeks in Florida, and his daughter is a big fan of cats. She loves cats, and I got a this sort of little purple cat with this crazy tail, and it's really fun. And they range in size. But you can get smaller ones for between 100 and 300 pesos. So $5 to $15. And then they make some that are obviously like very expensive and very beautiful, but I don't even know how you get it home. But I recommend this. There's a lot of different craft places to go, and you'll see these all over town. But this one place I really liked was La Casa de las Artesanias. Mm-hmm. And this was
the house of the artisans.
Exactly. And this was a cool place because it sort of combines dozens of different families and groups that make these various local pieces, from the toys we were just talking about, to the black clay pottery, to textiles. It's kind of like your one-stop souvenir shop in the city. It's really fantastic. And it's actually where I bought a couple of the pieces that I'm taking home. I got my mom some giraffe silver earrings, because Mexicans are known for great kind of fun silver stuff. So
but not so much for giraffes.
No, but my mom collects giraffes. So
I didn't know that.
Now she's going to listen to this and Christmas is ruined.
Oh, you were going to save them for next Christmas?
No.
Oh, is that what you give her when you tell her you're not coming home, that you're going to travel abroad?
Here's a giraffe. So that's definitely a place to check out. And, I recommend if you're planning to pick up some souvenirs, because there are so many galleries and so many shops, I would recommend waiting until sort of your last day to actually decide on what to get, because you're going to see so much stuff that I don't want you to get buyer's remorse and you buy the wrong colorful cat, and then you see a cat that's just perfect and you're like, I wish I had this cat instead. So I waited until the last day just because there's so many little markets around the square, and the options are pretty incredible when it comes to crafts and souvenirs and things like that.
That's it's a dangerous game. I remember there was a friend of yours that asked for a wooden capybara sculpture, and you waited to the last minute. And how'd that story end, Ryan?
I think you have that capybara displayed proudly on your shelf of knickknacks in your office.
No, I have an empty shelf. I have an empty shelf. That's what represents our friendship and podcasting bond here. An empty shelf.
Everywhere I go, I look for capybara. Trust me.
Except for the one place that I told you they made it.
So I want to jump in. I want to jump into food. Oaxaca is known for food. You know, folks in Oaxaca will tell you that they're sort of the center of Mexican food culture, because so much of what we consider to be great Mexican food, comes out of Oaxaca. For instance, mole, which is a thick sauce that's made from chili peppers and spices and corn.
I just made a mole a couple weeks ago.
And moles are Oaxacan. So a lot of the restaurants we're going to talk to today, you're going to get a chance to really eat some good mole. As you know, Kiernan, mole can taste very different depending on the chili you use, and there's so many different options in the city. So that's something that's really fun. So I'll start with the most fancy one. Enrique Olvera's newish place opened a couple years ago. And the word means sort of local or coming from local. And
I think it's Criollo.
Yeah.
It's Criollo. I'm giving the double L the Y sound that I think it calls for.
Yeah, this is a really cool place. A lot of the weather in Oaxaca is really nice year round. So a lot of the places have big kind of courtyards and outdoor eating. It was quite chilly. In fact, I think you made fun of my picture on Instagram of me. They gave me a blanket.
It's because you had the cold Panama hat on and you were wrapped in this like beautiful local textile. I was like, who is this? Who does this gringo think he is?
It is pretty gringo-y, that picture, I admit. So Enrique is, I have to say the most famous Mexican chef. He has his restaurant Pajol in Mexico City and Cosme in New York, all on the top 100 restaurants in the world list. This is a lovely spot, tasty menu that's Oaxacan inspired, although my friend was quick to tell me that Enrique is not from Oaxaca. So just to keep that in mind, that he's not cooking the food that his mother cooked for him necessarily. Very fish heavy, tasty menu, a lot of good mole, a lot of good sauce, and fun local drink pairing. So you get some mezcal. We're going to talk a bit about that. You get some local wine and local beer. Oaxaca's a party town, so definitely get that pairing. The New York Times said
hard to get a reservation.
This is definitely the most difficult place to get a reservation, but you can do it in like 2 weeks.
That's not too bad.
Yeah,
I mean, based on Pajol, I just that's
well,
like
Pajol's in a whole place,
different category.
Yeah. A place that I thought was a little more low key and I really enjoyed was Casa, Oaxaca. This is a rooftop restaurant that overlooks the Santo Domingo cathedral we were just talking about. Really beautiful at night with the lights. The food is super local, so a lot of meat and tortillas and moles on the menu. I had a pork taco and pork and mole dish that came with tortillas. That was really excellent. And this is a cool place. And they make the salsa right in front of you, and they give you all the options. They've got the chiles and they've got all the different things, and they're kind of asking you what you want in it, and they're making it in front of you. Make sure you go and say yes to the chapulines. Are you a chapulín guy?
Are chapulines the grasshoppers?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I've had one taco before. It was in New York, and it was a grasshopper taco, but they're not my go-to.
Yeah, so I'm not a huge fan of them either. They come from Oaxaca, and when you go to the market, and you see them, people literally buying them and eating them like they're chips. With chili sauce, and a lot of the restaurants will have them in, like I had them in a salad at Casa, Oaxaca actually. So kind of instead of croutons, you got what's that? Or waiter, there's a bug in my salad.
Cut that.
But one of the if they're kind of ground up and used in the sauce, it gives it like kind of a little kind of proteiny flavor, but
it's kind of like a ground shrimp,
Yeah, it doesn't kind of like hit you on your sort of American mind in the same way, like I'm eating a grasshopper. Versus when it's in a salad or on a taco and you see its little grasshoppery face. That's less exciting to me. So I think that's the place to try when they put it in the sauce, because then you're like, okay, I'm getting some of the local flavor, in a way that is just sort of less intense. And if I
that's a good. I like that recommendation. And some people will be turned off just by looking at the grasshopper, just its form. Can't get over that. Well,
they ask you they make sure that you know what you're putting in the sauce before you get it. Had a really good brunch at a place called.
So it sounds like you think that people should hop on over to Casa Oaxaca.
Oh, definitely. I recommend Casa Oaxaca. Just hop on over there. Mole, I want to miss it. That doesn't make any sense.
Oh boy, what does that mean?
Nothing. So a place I had a good brunch at, Boulenc. This is like a super hipster brunch place. There's no reservations. You're going to have to wait. We waited until Monday, which is Martin Luther King Day, thinking that would be less crowded than Saturday or Sunday, and it was less crowded, but it was still a little bit of a wait. But it's a very cool place. They've got these clay monkeys that are hanging off the wall that give it kind of like a Planet of the Apes vibes. Like these monkeys are kind of invading the restaurant. I'll share a picture on the Insta because it was pretty cool. But really good baked goods, both Mexican and French. So you can get your concha, you can get your croissant, whatever you prefer, and great coffee. And I had the bacon, egg, and cheese on an English muffin, and it was fantastic. And it's hard to make that interesting, but with the flavors and maybe some of the spices, it was just sort of a unique take on it. So I would definitely say if you're looking for brunch and you want to, do something kind of hip, this would be a place that I'd recommend.
Feels like you were really exploring the egg culture.
Well, we're going to see that in a second because Mercado 20 de Noviembre,
I'm pretty sure they'd call it Mercado 20 de Noviembre, but
this is one of the two big markets in the city. And a market that sells, a mix between food and crafts and just sort of everything. Like, these Mexican markets are really cool and they're in every city. This is a great place to try the Oaxaca egg yolk bread.
Now I don't know anything about this, but I'm very intrigued.
It's sort of like a brioche.
Okay.
But it is a specialty of Oaxaca. They sell it in, you can just buy one of them for like 10 pesos for like 50 cents. And it's delicious. And it's got a very like sweet, yolky kind of dense flavor. It's lovely. So, pan de llama, and llama is yolk in Spanish. And you'll see that for sale everywhere, but I would recommend, one of the little old ladies selling it in the marketplace there. And then tejate is a non-alcoholic corn and cacao drink.
That like a chocolate milk?
It's like a chocolate corn milk. Yeah.
That sounds pretty good to me.
It's pretty tasty. And this is another thing that I think is really good and worth trying at one of the markets. And that you'll see vendors just selling, variations of that sort of all up and down the aisles.
And you said non-alcoholic, which I'm assuming you abstained during most of your trip.
Well, no, because you know what Oaxaca is really known for?
It's got to be mezcal, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Mezcal it dates back to the Oaxaca region long in the pre-Hispanic era, long before the Spaniards came. It's made from local agave plants, which is what tequila is made from. In fact, tequila is a type of mezcal. It just comes from a different place in Mexico. So sort of a competing flavor, if you will. But to drink mezcal, it has to come from one of the handful of Mexican states, primarily Oaxaca, and then a few others. But it's like champagne. It's not champagne unless it's from the Champagne region. Mezcal is not really mezcal unless it's from one of these states in Mexico. So definitely mezcal is everywhere. I'm not going to talk about it really on this pod, but there's a cool botanical garden that you can visit in the city, and they have mezcal plants and things to see there. So
that's cool.
Yeah, they're very proud of the mezcal and the history. Two bars that I recommend. One is Bar Ilegal. these folks make a brand of mezcal that is actually sold at Henry's, my local.
Of course, we've interviewed the proprietor.
Yeah, friend of the pod. It's a really good small batch mezcal. They have a very cool bar that's like a Mexican rock club where they serve their mezcal and mezcal cocktails. Had a lot of fun there. Made for a difficult Sunday. It's why I missed church. But Mezcalogia. This is a much more calm place to go and have do some mezcal tastings. Try some of their unique mezcal cocktails. It's all local, independent mezcal made in Oaxaca. So and this is a great place, I think, to go sort of pre-dinner if you want to have a drink or two and try some really unique mezcals while you're in town. Both of these bars are in the center and very easy to walk to. And then I want to talk about one little excursion we took. There's a couple places that people go. There's an archaeological site. There are a couple smaller towns outside of Oaxaca that are very unique. But in the time that we had, we settled on going to see the Tree of Tule. And the Tree of Tule, Kieran, it's sort of like right out of Pandora, to quote a very popular film this year, Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 2,000-year-old or so Montezuma cypress tree. That is considered to be the widest or stoutest tree on the planet.
Okay.
It takes 30 people holding hands to go around the trunk of this tree.
That's a lot of people.
It's a big tree. Legends has it that it was planted 2,000 years ago by basically an Aztec priest. So it's a old, beautiful, massive tree, and folks should really, if you're kind of into nature, this is something definitely to see. It's about a 25-30 minute taxi ride outside of the main city.
That sounds very cool.
Yeah, it's definitely very cool. It's next to an old church, and it's the people know that it's very special. It's been beautifully preserved, and I was surprised at just to see how grand it was. And now there's all these legends where people see like a panther and like a lizard in the trunk, so you can kind of go around and try to find these various sort of animal forms that have kind of grown out of this tree.
Oh, that's
fun. So old. Yeah. And then there's a market right by this tree, the Santa Maria, which is less crazy and busy than the markets that are in downtown Oaxaca City, in center Oaxaca City. And this is where I had my favorite of the Tlayudas, or Tlayuda. I'm a little unsure how to pronounce this, but what this is,
it's Tlayuda. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what this is a traditional Oaxacan dish that is sort of a crunchy quesadilla with beans and tomatoes and avocado. And I had mine with steak and cheese. Really, really delicious. I loved it. I went to a fancy restaurant called Terra del Sol in the center of town, and 2 days after I had this at the market for 30 pesos, and they served me this dry, sad-looking thing. So I really suggest you should try this because it's unique to Oaxaca, and you should try to get it at either this market if you go out to Toll, or if you're in town. There's plenty of places in the main market that have it. I'd skip Terra del Sol if that's why we didn't sort of talk about it. There are so many places to eat besides that, but really cool, very specifically Oaxacan, and you should try it while you're there.
Oh, that's fantastic, Ryan. Boy, this is a hungry-making episode.
I know. And I think, that is sort of, those are my days in Oaxaca. I would definitely be back. As we always say, there's reasons to go back, and places to eat and other things to see. But I think until then, Kieran, it's time for the last stop.
The last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
Well, Ryan, we're here in the last stop. This is the last segment of the show. It's the final segment of the show, and we're losing daylight here, so we're going to go nice and fast. This is where you and I each serve one thing that feeds the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the work-a-day week. So, Ryan, I have to ask you, did you bring to me and to our wide listenership a last stop this week?
Yeah, I think right out of the plot of the hit film The Menu this year, or last year now, Noma, the famed Danish restaurant in Copenhagen, is closing its doors the end of 2024. It's got a lot of controversy. People love it. People hate it. Everybody seems to have an opinion. I've never gotten a chance to eat there. Times I've been to Copenhagen.
Very sad to see it go.
So now I've got 2 years to make this happen. So I think one of my New Year's travel resolution.
Oh my God, you're never going to make it.
Between now and the end of 2024 is to get to Copenhagen again and to get into Noma. So
that will be epic if you accomplish that.
Thank you. Did you bring a last stop, Kieran?
Yeah, I was inspired to change it at the last minute, actually, by your talk about the mezcal. I'm going to put in the show notes, there's this amazing article from the New Yorker in 2016. The New Yorker writes lots of words and lots of articles. So for an article to really stick with you for that many years, it's by Dana Goodyear, and it's called The Mezcal Sunrise, Searching for the Ultimate Artisanal Distillate. And it gives such a rich history of the drink and really teaches you a lot about mezcal, teaches you about some of the brands, some of the history and culture. We didn't really have time to do that on this episode, but it'd be fun to get a mezcal expert on with us sometimes, Ryan, now that you've visited the home of mezcal. But it is certainly something that will inspire the spirit of wanderlust within you, and you get a little bit of Oaxaca at home by purchasing a great mezcal.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to grabbing a mezcal tonight while I'm still in Mexico City. In 2 weeks, we've got the New York Times travel editor on talking about
52 places.
52 places. So welcome back. We're looking forward to the year.
Indeed, and Ryan, I can't wait to have you back in the States.
Soon enough.
Come on home.
Until then, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kieran Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
You would have had it, I promise. I was also looking for a skull priest. I've been looking for that too.
I love a skull priest. I need a skull altar boy. I need a Day of the Dead altar boy. I've got a priest and a nun. Let's complete the set. Or the Pope. I'd love a Pope.